Women from all over the world mobilized for International Women's Day to demand greater equality and protest sexist violence. In Georgia, more than 10,000 people gathered in the capital for a second day to demonstrate against the Foreign Agents Act. Mourners gathered in the Palestinian city of Jenin to mourn 5 people killed during an Israeli raid in the Jenin refugee camp. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Women from all over the world mobilized for International Women's Day to demand greater equality and protest sexist violence. As every March 8th, women were taken to the streets from Kabul to Bangkok on Wednesday to mark International Women's Day and to highlight the relevance of their struggles and the ongoing fight for their rights. Among the claims that are echoed worldwide is the continuous denouncement of gender inequality and sexist violence. In an increasingly unequal world system, women's demands are not too strange to the struggles of each nation, whether are aimed to uncover the inherent violence of a system that's most cruel with the most vulnerable. Equal access to labor market, education, abortion, and reproductive rights, along with the acknowledgement of women's unpaid work, that's to say domestic labor, the care of children, and the elderly, are some of the claims being echoed worldwide. In Venezuela, some women have transitioned from being homemakers to home builders. That's the case of Anti-Mano Project in Caracas, in a poor neighborhood of the Venezuelan capital, where 80% of the workforce is made up of women, most of them single mothers. Some cut reinforcing bars, some prepare concrete mix, and others lay pipes. They are making use of a government program that encourages construction by providing materials and technical guidance to first-time builders at no cost, in a bid to tackle an acute housing shortage in a country battling a severe economic crisis.
I bend rods, I make moorings, we carry sand, we carry blocks, we carry cement. In other words, we do different jobs here. And I really feel good about it, and even more so because it is to get a house for my son's future.
It is the first time I have met a woman who is a rebar master, and I feel even prouder because she is my mother. And even though she is, it is something very exciting. It is something that makes you feel like I would never have thought that my mother would be a rebar master, and neither that we will have this great opportunity to have a house, a home.
Several Brazilian cities commemorate International Women's Day with activities and mobilizations. The mobilizations in defense of women's rights on this March the 8th raised banners such as the fight against violence, hunger and fascism, as well as in defense of the environment and the right to land. In this regard, the movement of landless rural workers, MST, has been mobilizing since March 1st. Meanwhile, demonstrations are expected to take place throughout the day in the cities of Belém, Manaus, Natal, Brasilia, Campo Grande, and Sao Paulo, among others. Brazil's President Luis Inácio da Silva announced measures that seek to promote and protect women after years of setbacks in their causes. Ramir, teleSUR correspondent in Brazil, reports.
Brazil passed a law in 1942 guaranteeing women equal salaries to men for the same jobs, but in 2023 it's still not happening. On average, women earn 15% less than men for the same jobs in Brazil. So this morning, President Lula announced a package of 25 new projects for laws and policies designed to reduce inequality between men and women. And one of them was a bill submitted to Congress this morning, removing all of the loopholes in the 1942 law and also guaranteeing better mechanisms for the government to audit how much private companies are paying their employees to make sure that they're obeying the law. In addition, he announced 24 other measures, including 40 new battered women's shelters, 170 squad cars for police domestic violence units, and more money for technical assistance to women farmers and women students of hard sciences and mathematics. Thousands of women have come in from the landless rural workers movement to all of the big cities in the country to join members of labor unions, student unions, and urban social movements to march today to commemorate International Women's Day on this first occurrence of the day since the coup against Dilma Rousseff in 2016. Brazil passed a law in
Social organizations in the Cusco provinces of Peru continued their mobilizations demanding the resignation of President Dina Boluarte. At least 10 provinces, including those with major mines projects, went on strike after affecting mining companies of Las Bambas and Antacpacay. Protesters, most of them coming from rural areas in the provinces, demanded the resignation of President Dina Boluarte, the dissolution of Congress, immediate elections, and a new constitution. Social leaders reaffirmed that the Peruvian head of state must resign due to the violence carried out by security forces against protests, which began 3 months ago. So far, police repression has killed 60 people, mostly demonstrators gunned down by firearms. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In the aftermath of the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that killed more than 50,000 people in Turkey and Syria, Turkish women deal with added burdens after the disaster. On the streets, many women sleep in makeshift tents while dealing with poor hygiene conditions, the shame of asking for personal items and taking on chores such as cooking and cleaning. Meanwhile, social organizations and volunteers highlighted that women and LGBTIQ+ people can be very vulnerable to abuse in such disaster situations, hence the need for the government to pay extra attention in helping them. The toll from the 7.8 magnitude earthquake now stands at more than 46,000 in Turkey and nearly 6,000 in Syria, making it one of the world's 10 deadliest of the past 100 years.
There is a particular issue that I have observed with women here. They are not able to ask for their needs, personal needs, especially needs of being a woman from other aid distribution points other than those formed as women's aid units. Since all aid is distributed in public spaces, in zones where everyone is around, women find it hard to ask for the products they need. For example, underwear, bras, wax bands, tweezers, which require humanitarian needs considering that we are talking about a month-long process. Therefore, what they ask from us is mostly for those special products.
In this context, activists also draw attention to the ways in which the aftermath of disaster situations such as the February earthquakes leave vulnerable populations such as women and the LGBTIQ community at higher risk of abuse.
Women and LGBTI plus people can be very vulnerable to abuse in such disaster situations. For this reason, in order to maximize their safety and to provide them with a safe space, many of our friends, volunteer friends, comrades, keep watch with us in the tent area with the banner you see behind me, keeping this place safe.
On the occasion of International Women's Day, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, dedicated a message commemorating the occasion. In his words, the president highlighted the virtues of Russian women.
Dear women, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you all the best on the International Women's Day. Many countries celebrate this holiday, but for Russia, it is always full of warmth and special meaning, kindness, joy, and sincerity of feelings, because this devotion and respect for women and motherhood has an unconditional value for us, something we have passed on from generation to generation.
President Vladimir Putin also mentioned the conflict in Ukraine and emphasized the importance of women in difficult times.
In difficult times, in challenging moments, the warmth of a woman's heart always becomes a powerful force that points to the most correct, just, and necessary course of an action. This is what is happening now. I know how sincerely and sometimes selflessly you are supporting our soldiers and officers, whether they are your loved ones or complete strangers, both with warm words and good deeds. You write letters and send packages with things they need. You make camouflage nets and volunteer in hospital to care for all the soldiers as if they were your own children.
According to reports, more than 10,000 people gathered in the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi. This is the second day of demonstrations against the Foreign Agents Act. Thousands of people in Georgia's capital are protesting for the second day against the country's Foreign Agent Acts. They are trying to break down the gates of Parliament's courtyard and enter the government building. There are reports that the windows of Parliament building were smashed and that fireworks were thrown through the windows. The police used water cannons, tear gas, rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse the crowd and drive them away from the building. Protesters also threw Molotov cocktails at police, as they did yesterday. The protest came after the opposition claimed that the authorities failed to respond to demands made earlier. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back, so stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Egypt's health ministry said earlier Wednesday that 4 people died and 23 others were injured in the north of Cairo when a passenger train crashed into a station platform and derailed. According to an official report, 18 passengers were taken to Khaliyub Special Hospital, 3 others to the Central Charity Center, and 2 others had been transferred to the Nasser Institute Hospital in Cairo. The Ministry of Transport said the accident happened in Khaliyub on Tuesday evening after the train did not respond to a traffic light signal, sending it crashing into the buffer stop at the train station and derailing. Transport Minister Kemal El-Wazir said a committee was being formed to investigate the accident. In the meantime, the country's Ministry of Social Solidarity said it will offer the equivalent of $3,254 to the families of those killed. Mourners gathered on Wednesday in the West Bank city of Jenin to mourn 5 Palestinians killed during an Israeli raid in the Jenin refugee camp. On Tuesday, Palestinian health officials said the Israeli army raided a home in a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank, triggering a battle that killed at least 6 Palestinians and wounded more than 2,000 others. The military said that one of those killed in the Jenin refugee camp was the suspected assailant behind a fatal shooting of 2 Israeli brothers in the northern West Bank town of Hawara last week. An Israeli police spokesperson said 3 Israeli soldiers were in fair to serious conditions after being shot and wounded in Tuesday's firefight in Jenin. The Jenin Brigade, a loosely organized armed group based in Jenin camp, said its militants shot and hurled explosive devices at the Israeli soldiers. Despite the difficult situation Syria is going through, it is still the backbone of the resistance bloc to the Israeli occupation. This was affirmed from Damascus by the leaders of the Palestinian Hamas movement, together with their compatriots, the heads of the Palestinian faction living on Syrian soil. Let's see.
These statements were made at a meeting at the headquarters of the Palestinian National Council in Damascus between the leaders of the Syrian-based Palestinian factions and the delegation of the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, which is on the official visit to Syria to express its solidarity with the Syrian people after the earthquake, as well as to discuss with the Syrian authorities the development of events inside Palestine amid the aggressive escalation of a new Israeli extremist cabinet.
We are again in Damascus to express our solidarity with Syria and our condolences to the victims of the earthquake, as well as to analyze our political situation with the Syrian leadership in order to assess with our fellow fighters from other Palestinian factions the scenario occupied by Palestine in a new wave of resistance against the current Zionist government.
In addition to expressing solidarity with the Syrian people, chiefs and militants of the Palestinian factions gathered in the heart of Damascus, together with their Syrian brothers from various political parties and from civil society, to condemn the Western economic blockade imposed on Syria, which they denounce exacerbates the suffering of the Syrian people in the midst of the devastating crisis caused by the earthquake.
On behalf of the Palestinian people, the resistance factions, and the Syrian and Palestinian political parties, we demand the lifting of the blockade imposed on Syria, and we condemn that this blockade increases the suffering of the Syrian people after the earthquake, and call on the United Nations to pressure in order to lift the coercive measures and not give in to American hegemonic policies.
We condemn the Western coercive measures which caused suffering on the Syrian people for more than 12 years and call on the United Nations and other international organizations to take responsibility and lift this blockade, whose continuation constitutes crime against humanity.
We want to spread our voice to the whole world to help us lift the unjust Western blockade imposed on Syria, as Syria is tired of suffering so much because of the blockade and war and not because of the earthquake. So the situation is catastrophic, and we can no longer stand it, and we need help of the whole world to lift the blockade.
The Syrians and their Palestinian brothers face a common enemy which they have condemned for 12 years and which uses terrorism and blockade as a means to weaken Syria and consequently the entire resistance bloc, a goal they affirm can never be achieved, thanks to the steadfastness of the leadership army and people of Syria against the Western plans against them.
teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but before our farewells, we want to share with you a tribute to Shirley Chisholm, a champion of black women's rights performed by Rhythm Tribe and with the choreography of Aisha Dayo. Remember to find us on social medias. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.
The trip took 9 days on the rough Atlantic, all the way to Bridgetown, Barbados. I still remember arriving. We boarded the bus to ride to the village of Vauxhall where we were going to live. Grandmother decided it was time for me to start in the village school. Years later, I would know what an important gift my parents had given me with my early education in the schools of Barbados. If I speak and write easily now, that early education is the main reason. Granny gave me strength, dignity, and love. I learned from an early age that I was somebody.